Rain hammered against the windshield as Nathan Cole gripped the steering wheel, following the faint glow of a street lamp. His heart pounded. He'd never driven through the side of the city before. Cracked sidewalks, flickering signs, people huddled under awnings against the cold. But tonight, something had driven him here. A question he couldn't shake. Why did his maid, a woman who earned barely enough to survive, walk home smiling through a storm every night? Through the wiper's rhythm, he spotted her, Margaret Daniels, gray curls tucked under a faded scarf, soaked through but still clutching her lunchbox like it was something sacred. She turned down a narrow alley. Nathan hesitated, then followed. Headlights dimmed. Moments later, he froze. There she was, standing beneath a leaky shelter, surrounded by barefoot children. Steam rose from a single pot as she served bowls of soup with trembling hands and that same radiant smile. She wasn't just feeding them. She was comforting them, hugging them, whispering prayers over them. Nathan's chest tightened. For years, he'd thought kindness was a luxury, something people pretended to do for the cameras. But this was real. It was quiet, hidden, holy. Before we dive deeper into the story, tell me, where are you listening from? I'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something special waiting for you. Another story that will remind you how powerful simple kindness can be. Now, let's go back to the day before everything changed. Nathan Cole was a billionaire who'd built his empire on numbers, not people. Every second of his life was optimized. Assistants scheduled his smiles. Emails decided his mornings, and profit dictated his peace. He was respected, feared, but never known. And every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, Margaret Daniels quietly slipped to the back door of his glass-walled mansion. She moved like clockwork, dusting the marble stairs, humming old hymns, and leaving the faint scent of lemon polish in her wake. No one ever asked about her life. No one ever noticed her limp. Until that Friday night. Nathan had stayed late in his office. Paper scattered across his desk. It was a merger deal worth billions, but it meant laying off 5,000 workers. He didn't flinch. Numbers were numbers. Until he looked out his window and saw her, Margaret, walking down the long driveway into the storm. She had no umbrella, no car, just that old coat she'd worn for years and a small lunchbox clutched to her chest. Something strange stirred in him. Guilt? No. Curiosity, maybe. Why would a woman with so little still walk like she carried something precious? The next day, Margaret arrived as usual, smiling, polite, invisible. But Nathan couldn't stop watching her. When he asked if she ever took a day off, she laughed softly and said, "No, sir. Someone's always waiting." "Waiting?" he asked. She just smiled again and walked away. That night, Nathan made a decision. He canceled his dinner meeting, grabbed his car keys, and followed her. He didn't know what he was expecting. Maybe a rundown apartment, maybe a family struggling to survive. But what he found would shake him to his core and force him to question everything he'd ever believed about worth, wealth, and what it really means to live a good life. Now, let's see what happens next. Nathan sat in his car that night, engine off, headlights dimmed, watching from the shadows as Margaret moved like a saint among the forgotten. She ladled soup from a single dented pot into paper bowls, passing them to children with hollow eyes and swollen bellies. Her coat was torn at the seams, her shoes soaked through, but her smile never broke. "Eat slow," she whispered to one boy, maybe 6 or 7. "Make it last till morning." Nathan's throat tightened. He couldn't remember the last time he'd looked anyone in the eye without seeing a number attached. When she was done serving, she gathered the children in a circle and pulled out her lunchbox, the same one she brought to his mansion every morning. Inside wasn't food for her. It was small sandwiches and pieces of fruit wrapped carefully for kids. Nathan felt something inside him crumble. He leaned back against the seat, guilt cutting deep. This woman, his employee, had probably used her meager paycheck to feed half this neighborhood. And here he was, signing deals that stole livelihoods from thousands. He stayed until she finished, watched her limp down the street alone, and sat there for a long time, rain tracing the windshield like tears. The next morning, when Margaret arrived at work, he couldn't look at her the same way. She greeted him with her usual warmth. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," and set his coffee on the table just how he liked it. But now he noticed things he'd never seen before. The faint tremor in her hands, the worn stitching on her sleeves, the way her back stiffened slightly when she bent. "Margaret," he said quietly, "how long have you been working here?" She smiled faintly. 20 years, sir. Give or take a few." He nodded. "And you live alone?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second. "I manage." That was the first time he heard her avoid a question. It lingered with him the rest of the day. Later, he asked his assistant, Jenna, to pull up Margaret's employee file. Her records were spotless. Never missed a day. No complaints. No request for raise or leave. But there was something odd. Her listed address was in one of the city's poorest districts. That night, Nathan's mind raced. He couldn't sleep. He thought about the children's faces, the peeling walls of that shelter, the way Margaret's voice trembled when she said, "Someone's always waiting." He had no more. The following evening, he followed her again, this time without hesitation. But tonight, something was different. When she arrived at the community center, the lights were off. Inside, Nathan saw a tall man waiting, wearing a suit far too expensive for this part of town. Margaret's posture changed immediately. "Mr. Graves," she said softly, "please, I just need a little more time." Nathan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Graves sneered. "You've been behind on rent for 2 months, Maggie. Don't make me sell this place to the developers. You think your little charity matters?" "This place feeds children," she pleaded. "Please, I'll pay. Just a few more weeks." Graves stepped closer. "You don't have anything left to pay with." That was the moment Nathan snapped. He burst out of the car and stormed toward them, his voice low but firm. "Is there a problem here?" Graves turned, startled. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone," Nathan said, "who doesn't appreciate watching good people being cornered." Margaret's eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Cole, what are you?" Graves scoffed. "This isn't your business. Rich boy." Nathan's tone turned to ice. "It is now. Name your price to clear her debt." The man laughed. "You can't just throw money." Nathan pulled out his checkbook and scrawled a number without flinching. "Done." Graves' expression faltered. He snatched the check, muttered something under his breath, and disappeared into the rain. Silence filled the alley. Only the sound of dripping water between them. Margaret's eyes were wide, glassy with disbelief. "You shouldn't have done that, sir." Nathan exhaled. "I couldn't just stand there." Her voice trembled. "You don't understand. That man isn't just a landlord. He's connected to the same company you're about to merge with." The realization hit like lightning. His $1 billion deal, the one that would close in 2 days, was tied to Graves' company. The same one that was threatening to demolish the community center to build luxury condos. Nathan stepped back, stunned. "I didn't know." Margaret gave a sad, tired smile. "Now you do." That night, Nathan sat in his car outside her small apartment, the streetlights flickering weakly. Through her window, he watched her unpack groceries and feed a stray cat. Her world was fragile, humble, yet filled with a warmth his mansion could never hold. He knew what he had to do, but doing it meant tearing apart everything he'd built. The next morning, the board meeting began. His advisor smiled, congratulating him. Contracts were printed, pens ready. But Nathan's hand wouldn't move. He kept seeing those children, Margaret's trembling hands, the soup pot. He stood abruptly. "I can't sign this." The room fell silent. "What?" One of the board members barked. "Nathan, this deal is worth billions." "I said," he repeated, "I'm not signing it." "Are you out of your mind? You'll lose everything." He looked up, calm but resolute. "Then maybe it's time I find something worth keeping." The board erupted into chaos, shouts, papers thrown, threats made. But Nathan walked out without looking back. That night, he drove to the shelter again, this time not to follow, but to help. He didn't announce who he was, didn't bring cameras or checks. He just rolled up his sleeves and asked, "What do you need?" Margaret stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. "Just another pair of hands." And for the first time in his life, Nathan Cole, the billionaire everyone feared, picked up a ladle and served soup beside the woman who had unknowingly saved his soul. But the world wasn't done testing them yet, because the next morning, someone from the press found out, and within hours, everything went public. The news spread like wildfire. Billionaire CEO walks away from multi-billion-dollar deal to help Maid feed the poor. The headlines were merciless. Stock prices plummeted overnight. Investors called him insane. Reporters swarmed his mansion gates, shoving microphones into his face. Nathan didn't care, not at first. For the first time, he felt alive. But the board wasn't about to let him go quietly. At dawn, his assistant Jenna called, voice trembling. They're holding an emergency meeting. They're trying to oust USCO. Nathan tightened his grip on the phone. Let them try. That same morning, Margaret arrived at work, but was stopped at the front gate. Security refused to let her in. Orders from upstairs, they said. You've been let go. Nathan stormed into the lobby minutes later, rain-soaked and furious. Who signed off on this? The HR director stammered. Sir, the board decided your friendship with her creates a liability. Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper that cut deeper than a shout. She's the only person in this company who isn't a liability. He turned to Margaret, eyes burning with guilt. You shouldn't have been dragged into this. She smiled softly. If this is the price of kindness, I'll pay it again. But before he could reply, a voice echoed from behind, calm, venomous, and too familiar. It was Graves. I warned you, Nathan, he sneered, stepping forward. You just cost me a deal worth millions. Did you really think walking away would erase your name from this game? Nathan's jaw clenched. This isn't a game. You're exploiting people's lives. Graves smirked. And you? You used to do the same. Don't pretend this sudden morality makes you any different. For a moment, Nathan froze, because Graves was right. He had been the same man once, ruthless, transactional, numb. Margaret stepped forward. No, she said firmly. He's not the same. I've seen him where it matters, when no one was watching. Graves laughed, mocking. Touching. Maybe he should marry his maid and open a soup kitchen. Something inside Nathan snapped. He stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. You'll never understand what real wealth is. It's not about owning, it's about giving. That line, recorded by one of the reporters outside, would go viral within hours. Nathan turned his back on Graves, took Margaret's trembling hand, and said simply, "Come with me." That evening, he gathered his remaining loyal staff, sold his second home, and used the funds to buy back the community center Graves had tried to demolish. The papers called it madness. Social media called it a billionaire's redemption arc. But Nathan didn't care about either. Weeks passed. The media storm eventually quieted. The shelter was rebuilt, children laughed again, and Margaret, for the first time in years, looked at peace. Then came the twist that no one saw coming. One morning, as Margaret unlocked the shelter doors, she found an envelope taped to the handle. Inside was a note in Nathan's handwriting. If you're reading this, I've stepped down from everything. The company, the board, the spotlight. You once told me kindness doesn't need an audience. I'm finally learning that. This place is yours now, in every legal sense. The deed is signed over to your name. Thank you for teaching me what wealth really means. Margaret's hands trembled as she read it. Tears fell freely onto the page. She looked up and through the morning fog, saw him across the street, smiling faintly before disappearing into the crowd like a man reborn. She whispered through tears, "Goodbye, Mr. Cole." But that wasn't the end, because months later, a convoy of black cars rolled into the neighborhood. Inside was a foundation team bearing Nathan's new project, the Margaret Daniels Center for Hope, built to serve thousands of children across the city. When reporters asked him why he named it after his former maid, Nathan's answer silenced the room. Because sometimes the richest soul in a room is the one sweeping its floors. And in that moment, the world and Nathan Cole finally understood what real legacy means. Months later, the once quiet neighborhood where Margaret had spent her evenings feeding children buzzed with new life. The old community center had become the Margaret Daniels Center for Hope. Its walls were bright with color, the kitchens expanded, and the dining hall filled with laughter. Every evening, hundreds of children were served hot meals, not by strangers, but by volunteers inspired by her story. Nathan Cole's name no longer appeared on Forbes lists or in corporate boardrooms. He lived simply now, teaching financial literacy to underprivileged teens, anonymously funding scholarships for families like Margaret's, and finding peace in anonymity. Reporters occasionally caught glimpses of him, wearing plain clothes, smiling in the background as the children he helped grew and thrived. But when asked for interviews, he always said the same thing: "Don't tell my story. Tell hers." As for Margaret, she never saw herself as a hero. When asked how she changed a billionaire's heart, she would laugh softly and say, "I didn't change him. Kindness did." Her health began to fade with age, but her spirit didn't. One evening, as the sunset glowed golden across the center's walls, Nathan visited her. She smiled weakly and whispered, "Promise me you'll keep feeding them." He took her hand gently. "Always." That night, she passed peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by love, gratitude, and the legacy of lives she touched. And in her honor, Nathan launched the Daniels Initiative, a nationwide movement funding shelters, food banks, and schools in underserved communities. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And remember, even the smallest act of compassion can change someone's entire world.